I try to encourage people, including myself, to eat healthier and eat more nutritiously. However, I'm not a radical fanatic about it. I definitely believe it, and I'm definitely working on it myself. But I definitely believe you need to enjoy some really good stuff once in a while. You need to have something to look forward to on occasion that you really enjoy to eat. This is one of my all-time favorites. I found them on sale, marked down, and these are beef ribs. And they are one of my favorite, like I just said. The one drawback to these here is the butchers tend to really scalp these and take most of the meat off. They still taste really wonderful though. I think my cat knows. She's yelling at me already and they're not even out of the package yet. But these are fatty. I'm going to trim them down and remove as much fat as possible. By the way, if you're not familiar with it, these beef ribs are what would be on a ribeye steak, a bone-in ribeye steak, or a rib roast. They're often known as a prime rib roast, where the meat would be, on top of the bones here. It would be, stacked on top of the bone here. That's the roast part has been removed, leaving just the rib bones. You gotta wait, girl. It's not even close. And you can cook these like anything else a number of different ways. Two of the most popular ways, or most common ways, are to cook these at a low temperature for a long time, 5, 6, 8, even 12 hours or so, really, really low temperature, maybe 250 degrees. And they come out super tender, and they're really good. I'm usually impatient because I love them so much. I cook them usually at a higher temperature for only, 2 to 3 hours at the most. Granted, they're not going to be quite as tender, but my number one thing is not tenderness that's important to me. Tenderness is important, yes, but my number one thing is flavor, and these are big on flavor. So, they're going to have a little bit of a chew to them, exactly like it would have if you were to gnaw on the bone from your ribeye steak, or if you have one from a rib roast or prime rib roast. So I'm okay with a little bit of a chewiness to them. That makes it more fun for me. If you like them super tender, that's cool. Cook them longer. Cook them the way you like them. Don't let somebody else tell you, oh, you gotta do this, oh, you gotta do that, oh, you can't do that. No, no, no. Yes, yes, yes. Cook it the way you like it. So I'm gonna trim some of this excess fat off. I'm using a fillet knife. It's really flexible. See that? It's really, really flexible there. It allows you to work closer to the bone and get more of the fat off. This on the front isn't terribly bad. Now, yes, while they're cooking, the fat will get hot and it will melt off. But I want to go ahead and remove as much extra as I can. Just makes things a little easier, makes things a little nicer. On the front, they're usually not too bad. It's the back side that you really need to look out for. And actually, these aren't too bad right here. Sometimes you'll see these with just a big 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch fat cap on them. These are pretty thin, pretty nice. So I'm just cutting the fat off the back. There's also a membrane on here. It's pretty thin. Again, it's personal preference. Some people, it really bothers them. They don't like it on there. Some people doesn't really care, doesn't really matter. it doesn't really matter that much to me. Be careful when you're working towards your hand or anywhere else. Use a very sharp knife, that way you won't make any sudden slips or anything. And trim as much excess fat off as you can. This will take a few minutes. Take your time. See how it curves against the bone there? To take as much fat off as possible. It just makes it easier to not have as much fat in the pan while they're cooking. That way you have more juice, easier to separate the fat from the juice and make a sauce if you like. But just work your way around the bones, taking as much fat off as you're able to. Let me look at the other one here. It may have a little bit more fat on the back side to show you what I mean when I say it's really fatty. It's a little bit more obvious here. Bigger chunk. So you just keep working on them. Take your time, don't get in a hurry. I'm going to go ahead and finish trimming these down, getting the fat off. And I'll be back in just a second and we'll continue from there. You can see there, I've got them reasonably well trimmed. I'm not trying to do a perfection job here because a lot of this fat is just going to come off during the cooking process. I just wanted to get the worst of the fat off and most of the membrane. You can see little pieces of the membrane here and there, and it doesn't bother me. Some people it bothers, and if that's the case, take a little more time and get all that membrane off there. I'm going to season both these and go ahead and put them in the oven. I am going to try to put these in here so they stand up pretty well, if I can. There we go. I think that'll work pretty good. You can season these up any way you like. I like to sprinkle a little bit of a good quality Worcestershire sauce on them. This is the one that I've found I like best. There are cheaper ones, but I think they taste cheaper, and the few pennies difference is worth it to me to have a really good quality. So just and if you really want, you can put these in a large plastic zipper type bag or any kind of a food safe container that's big enough for them, and let them marinate overnight in the Worcestershire or sauce or whatever else you happen to like, if you like a stronger flavor. And I'm going to put one of my favorites seasonings on there. This is Simply Marvelous Season All. Let's see, I think their website address is simplymarvelousbarbecue.com. I think that's it. That's simplymarvelousbarbecue.com. Yeah, I think it's only available online. You can use Lowry seasoned salt. That's very good. I've used it many times. I think McCormick also makes a pretty good one. There are other different brands, different seasonings. Basically, season this up the way you like your steak seasoned. If you just like it salt and pepper or nothing at all, that's the way you should go for it. I like them a little bit heavily seasoned. And that's it. It's very simple, very tasty. I'm going to add a couple of cups of water to it here just to provide a little steam, a little moisture. There we go. And you can season the back of these too. I've done it again both ways. I've seasoned it front and back, and it's just less messy to season only one side of them. And my back's hurting, my feet are hurting, my legs are hurting, so I'm just going to season the one side, the top side where most of the meat is, and go from there. And stick around. It's going to be pretty quick for you, but for me it's going to be a couple hours. And we're going to show you some really tasty ribs here. And I'm going to go ahead and do just a little more. They're starting to have some moisture being pulled out by the spices here. So I'm going to add a little more seasoning because it'll stick a little bit more now too, since that moisture is showing up on the surface of the ribs. There. I'm going to take a look at them after an hour, hour and a half maybe, and if I think I need it, I'll wrap them in foil and put them back in to finish off. But generally I'll do them just like this, but sometimes I like to mix it up, like I say, and cover them with foil. So let's go from here. There we go. They were looking pretty good there. They weren't looking like they wanted to dry out any. They're looking just like I want them there. You see this a little bit. You can see there how the meat is pulled back on the bone pretty well. Some of them more than others. And that's what I'm looking for. You can see those two, where the meat is pulled back. This has been just a tad past 2 hours in the oven at 300 degrees. It's been about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And they look mighty fine to me here. Like I said, they're not going to be super tender because I only cooked them for 2 hours. You can see the back side there. And see how most all that fat that was there is now cooked off. There's still some remaining left. There's always going to be some naturally. But up here in the joints and all, down through there, it's pretty much all cooked off and into the bottom. I'll pour that off and let the fat rise to the top and solidify. I'll put it in the refrigerator, and I'll save the beef juice to use for whatever I like. Maybe for a French tip sandwich sometime later, or save it to make an au jus with for a prime rib, or something like that. Sounds pretty good. Anyways, I'm gonna let these cool down just a little bit. Not too much though. And we'll get busy with them here. These are fairly easy to slice. Coming apart right there, so I'll start with that one. You can see as I'm slicing these, they're reasonably tender because it's a pretty tender piece of meat to start with. And they're really quite tender and very tasty. Very, very tasty. There we go. It's a pretty good looking plate of ribs there. Give them a try. They're so easy and very tasty. I'll tell you a little secret that I do. When I buy any beef, and keep in mind this is for beef only, not for chicken, not for turkey, not for pork, and just beef only. There's a date on the package. It'll say use or freeze by this date. I buy beef and I let it go 2 to 3 days past that use or freeze by date before I cook it, because the meat is more tender and more flavorful at that point. It's safe to eat. You might, if you're not sure what you're doing, you can check it each day and smell it, and if it smells fine, it's good to use. If it starts smelling just a tiny bit different than usual, go ahead and cook it, and it's safe there. I probably wouldn't go past 3 days, but it starts to it starts to become heading in the direction of being rotten, but it's not yet. It's still good, still safe to eat. That's what's known as wet aging. It's age it in the package, and it's still moist. It's called wet aging. There's another method called dry aging, and I don't recommend you do that at home unless you know really, really well what you're doing, and you have a dedicated refrigerator, and you thoroughly investigate it beforehand to make sure you know what you're getting in for. There's a really famous restaurant in New York called Peter Luger's Steakhouse. I've never been there. Love to go someday. And it's very expensive. There are other restaurants too, I'm sure, that do it. But they dry age their beef. And it loses some moisture content, obviously, and it shrinks. But they say it concentrates the flavor and makes it really, really intense beef flavor from the dry aging process. But give it a try. You can do this so easily. You can cook them longer, like I say. I would foil them if I was going to cook them longer to make sure they don't dry out. But let me show you here. Look at that there. It's really tender. Nice and spicy. Ooh, good. Very good. See, it comes apart pretty easily. It's quite tender. Very tasty. I said that about 1,000,000 times. They're just so good. Lots of flavor. I decided to sneak in a real close-up shot here for you. Here you go. You can see how the fibers of the meat are coming apart there. And it's really tender, flavorful, and juicy still. You gotta try it if you haven't. See you next time on Cook and Gobble videos.